Hey, this is Carl, also known as Zarepath in the Custom Magic community, and I am back to do a video on my vote for the custom standard rotation. I've spent the last week or so recording videos, doing overviews and reviews of each of the 10 sets that have been nominated for the next rotation. I didn't really do a full one for my own set, Metropolis, but I did do kind of a short video primer talking about specific constructed decisions. All those videos are in my YouTube channel. You can check those out for more details about each individual set and just kind of my reactions to them. But I thought since I've been doing these videos, I might as well also do a video for my vote to kind of talk through my thinking. Um, and so the way the vote works, there's 11 slots. And for anybody who randomly comes across this video and has no idea what I'm talking about, there's a custom Magic format called Custom Standard that is specifically for custom Magic sets to rotate into. We play constructed, 60 card decks. It's a lot of fun. There's a rotation coming up. We're voting on it in a couple days, and 10 sets were nominated, which is the most that I believe has ever been nominated for the format. So it's kind of an exciting time. But anyway, the way the vote's going to work is you rank the sets, and the higher the rank, the more points or however it works go to that set. So there's 10 sets and 11 possible options. Um, the 11th option being no rotation. Some people like to use that pick to kind of mark that there's specific sets they definitely would not want to see in custom standard. I I feel like all the sets are decent enough. I wouldn't be like ashamed of having it in custom standard. You know what I mean? Um, I think custom standard sets have set kind of a high bar, but I don't think none of these sets are like MTG Cardsmith or anything like that. A lot of the designs and even the sets I've ranked the lowest have some really interesting uh, gameplay to them. There's really good design in all of these sets, and all of them have a certain basic level of polish, which is pretty good. And I also think the custom standard is always the best tool when there's sets rotating in and out with frequency. I think delaying a rotation is I just really dislike it. It feels ugly, and um, it. I think it's worse for the format than introducing a new set that maybe isn't the best of all the sets that could be nominated, but um, still has enough polish that it wouldn't actively harm the format. So I have no rotation as number 11. Number 10, I have Descent from the Highlands. Descent from the Highlands was kind of an interesting set to review because it felt a little bit more like a cube. Like there are just a lot of really unique individual designs. That as a Johnny, I really appreciate all the build-arounds that there were, but because the set itself didn't have a strong cohesive identity, I'm ranking it lower. It had two mechanics I enjoyed, Blood Price and Force C, but the individual designs that had the mechanics I thought didn't execute the mechanic in the most fun way. Uh, and some other individual designs just kind of had problems in the set, which is why I've ranked it a little bit lower. But I did enjoy those mechanics, and I think with some refinement and redesign, that may be a stronger direction on the cohesion of the set and what its theme is. I think it could be pretty good. Iron Horse I have at number 9. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of Iron Horse. It's not just Wild West magic, but also incorporated a lot of Oriental themes and Oriental fantasy, which I think is kind of a cool marriage. I enjoyed several of the individual designs. I disliked how there's only one new mechanic, which was Progress, and I don't think Progress was that great. I think too many of the Progress designs gave you not enough control or inevitability in adding the counters and achieving the basic enchantment state of the progress cards. Um, yeah, so I don't like that. I dislike that there weren't other new mechanics. I think Custard is really served when mechanics or when sets have splashy new mechanics that make people want to play Magic in new and different ways, and kind of highlights a lot of the value of the custom Magic community and creating new avenues both to design new cards but also new gameplay experiences and that you can't get inside Magic. And I think, you know, not having new mechanics is a problem. And I know I had one, but um, yeah, so that's why I have Iron Horse ranked a little lower. I have High Noon at 8, another Wild West Magic set. This set felt very polished, and it had a lot of really great resonant designs, just a lot of individual designs like Warning Shot and Pocket Aces that, I mean, I just love those designs. Those are great. Um, there is a little bit of Wild West fatigue after having Laredo, and there's just a lot of love for Laredo and people who played the format when Laredo was in it. And there's a lot of names and art that just copy the same things from Laredo, whether intentionally or not. I mean, I'm prone to think that it's more of a coincidence just because of the lack of excellent fantasy tinged Wild West art that is available for us to use in our sets. Um, also, the vision mechanic uh, just has so much complexity for such little gain, and you know, even at common, the design doesn't make sense with the vision cards, which is a major mark against the set, in my opinion, because I think vision was one of 3 new mechanics in the set. And then there's individual designs like Ether Leak that are interesting build arounds, but I dislike their designs generally. But a very polished and well executed set, and there's a lot of individual designs I really enjoy in it. Garif, this is in some ways has an opposite problem in that the aesthetics are very generic, incredibly generic, but I like a lot of the individual mechanics. So influence is very interesting to me. I think it could probably be executed better and improved in some ways, but it's an interesting mechanic with when you think about it for constructed. I don't think it would have the same problems as energy, but it would challenge players in deck building in some of the same ways that energy did. Reprise seems like a fine mechanic. Assimilate just felt really overly complicated and wordy, but I really loved a lot of the designs that had Assimilate on it. And I think it's because I kind of like Graveyard Recursion quite a bit, and a lot of the Assimilate designs were in green and black, focusing on assimilating abilities out of your graveyard, which was a unique way to turn your graveyard into a toolbox that I don't think has been seen often before, where you're mining your graveyard for specific creature abilities, or even land abilities, so you can turn some things into mana dorks by assimilating, mana ramping abilities. So I really like those mechanics. They could have probably been executed better for complexity's sake, like assimilate, particularly at common, has uh, just led to some really wonky designs to read. But yeah, the generic aesthetics are a mark against it when so many of these other nominated sets have very intentional aesthetics, and there's almost no generic fantasy sets. Um, it just having generic fantasy as a flavor was a mark against it. And abilities matter is kind of a weird space to be. Assimilate cares about abilities. There was also another mechanic, I think, adaptive, that didn't feel like it needed to be a mechanic, and it also cared about abilities. Wait, no, it didn't care about abilities, but I still didn't like that mechanic. I think there was another one that cared about abilities. I'm not sure what it was. But abilities matter is kind of a weird space to be for a mechanical theme for your set. So I'd look for a different way to unite the mechanics and the flavoring Garith. But it has enough cards that I would enjoy and a unique enough mechanic for constructed that um, I've ranked it higher than some of the other sets. Number 6, I have Eternia Whiterun. It's very polished and it has really good aesthetics and art, even though it feels like it's kind of generic fantasy. It's something Caliber mentioned in his review. Um, there's not like a huge focus on the tournament, and yet it still feels like you're at a tournament. And maybe it's just because the art is so polished and, you know, matches the characters really well. I'm not sure. But there's some powerful, compelling designs in Eternia Whiterun, and I really like the cripple mechanic, which is a little unfair because it's essentially Spectacle from Rakdos in this latest Ravnica set, which, the creator couldn't have known when they made this set. But yeah, there's just a lot of different tools in the set that I could see having positive influences on the format, and I think the cripple designs are interesting to build around, particularly since they approach Magic in a different way than Spectacle does. You see it in blue, the more card advantage and instant speed things you want in a controlling deck, which Spectacle obviously doesn't touch in Rakdos. They have to kind of hit the mechanics as one note things in Ravnica to kind of convey the guilds and what they're about. A lot of the individual designs are problematic, though, like Declare Mother Bear. I think there's the 1 mana green stompy creature, which just seems, really swingy. Um, and there's also an issue of redundant design. Some of the space is explored in multiple designs. Like a lot of the cripple cards draw cards. There's a lot of designs that make both players draw cards. In white, there's tons of different cards and effects that directly encourage turbo fog, which I don't know if I'm ready for that to be a thing. And so the redundant designs and the particular choices of what they've decided to push are what, put this down in the bottom half for me. But it's very polished and I enjoy the set a lot. Scriptures of Urshad I have at a 5. I think this set is generally, I think everybody is pretty favorable on the set, and there's kind of a general sense of, it's kind of brought its constructed offerings together pretty close to the time of this rotation, and it could probably benefit from some more time um, becoming a little more conscious about what needs to be pushed and what doesn't. I really enjoy just the way the set is put together, and it has a nice resonant appeal to it. It's mechanically sound. I think civilized is really interesting um, for the constructed implications, particularly if the set rotates in with other artifact sets or artifact sets rotate in afterwards or enchantment sets, things like that. Um, However, and I think everybody kind of agrees with that, civilized could be interesting with other sets that feature like, artifact tokens or have enchantment mechanics. But there's not actually that many pushed civilized cards. And I think Matt would agree that he's still figuring out what the best way to push his mechanics is and which designs are the best designs to push. It's just a set that I think needs a little more time in the oven, if that makes sense. But look forward to having it in custom standard at some point. For number 4, I have Erelu. Erelu has some of the same. Well, let me start by saying I think Erelu is the aesthetic all-star of all the sets. I think it has the most deliberate aesthetics and delightful aesthetics, if that makes sense. There's so many individual card designs that are resonant and carry across just an excellent tone, like just a very consistent tone to the set, um, as it is a top-down set. And I think Simon knocked the ball out of the park from the top-down perspective. Mechanically, it's also mechanically sound. All the mechanics work together in kind of a circle of life kind of thing. Petals help you ramp into, um, oh gosh, what's that mechanic called? Ensoul. And Ensoul works well with the ETB abilities of Harmony creatures. Um, Germinate also helps creatures get big enough for you to ensoul them, and it also ensoul or Germinate also can make little 1/1 creatures that you can tap for tithe, and petals can also be tapped for tithe. So there's just a lot of really interesting ecology of mechanics in the set. Um, and that translates into constructed in ways that at sometimes are unappealing to me. So like harmonize is one of the mechanics that feels more pushed for constructed when you look at the designs than the other mechanics, which rubs me a bit the wrong way because all the harmonize if harmony is going to be a constructed mechanic, it's all going to be in one deck. Um, there's not very many harmonized designs that could see play outside of the harmonized deck. Um, and I'm also a little concerned about the development of petals. I think petals and treasure are generally less safe than custom magic designers understand them to be and can do damage to the color pie. We're not Wizards of the Coast. We don't have to worry about long-term ramifications on the color pie. but it does make green ramp designs less appealing and less needed in the format. Um, I think Simon's been pretty careful with the pedals though, but it is one reason that I'm a little uncertain about the constructed offerings. Uh, Another note I have is just the Contra, which are the end soul creatures. There seem to be a lot of them at rare, and which is okay. And this is very nitpicky. It's more of a numbers thing, but just my general feel of the constructed cards is they all use the set's mechanics um, and push them for custard, which makes sense. I think all sets do that, but it seems like there's a little bit fewer generic designs that would fit well with any format, and just a lot of here's more contra, here's more harmonizing, and here's pedals stapled to a staple effect, um, and that's grossly oversimplifying it. There's a lot of really appealing designs. There's a lot of cards that individually I'd like to play, um, but all of this is just kind of nitpicking to say I think similar to Scriptures of Urshad, I think Simon could use a bit more time to consider the constructed offerings and maybe fine tune them a bit more. And that might just be my subjective opinion, because, like I said, it's very well polished and there's great aesthetics to the set, and the mechanics all play with each other well. I just don't know if the choice of mechanics to push is always the correct choice. Vestum I have is number 3, mostly on the back of the wastes mechanic. I really want to play wastes in custom constructed. I think that and colorless mana matters could be very fascinating in custard. I'm not as concerned as others are about it sharing too much, about it and Rakoa existing in the same format and that being an issue. I like the tension that that provides. Other people aren't as high on that, which is understandable, I suppose. Um, my criticism of the set would be I really dislike human tribal, which is a minor part of the set, but it is something that I have a problem with from a design perspective. And just kind of generally, the lore and aesthetics are a little bit muddy, if that makes sense. Like everything feels like it could fit in Vestum, but because the tone of Vestum is very dreary and apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, it has just a general feeling of malaise across the whole set, which isn't always a positive. Um, there's not as much excitement and adventure, just in the flavor and aesthetics. And again, particularly for these last few sets, these things that I'm criticizing are more nitpicky, and I'd honestly be happy with almost all of these sets making it into custard. But particularly these top 5, I'd be excited to play custard with any of them. And it feels a little more arbitrary, the ranking, and a lot more subjective. Number 2, I have Ruins of Doharum. And this is definitely subjective, but I really, really, really think that seal and structures could lead to very interesting constructed play. Really interesting constructed play patterns if it's developed correctly, and I think there's signs that he has been developing it correctly. Chips has done a good job with Ruins of Doharum. I think having all of those seal designs could lead to very interesting play. There are some complexity issues with the set. Um, Runic mana and structures and seal are all kind of complex. I guess runic mana isn't overly complex, but it does introduce a new symbol and it makes you look at artifacts differently. Structures are definitely complex, but they're not hard to play with once you understand. Um, and honestly, some of the complexity issues are mostly for like limited and just looking at the set as a set. And limited doesn't matter as much for custard, but it does matter a bit, if only for the sealed league at the beginning, but also just for the sake of custard saying, these are the best custom sets in our community. Um, I think Passage Chips is working on simplifying a lot of the comments and just the way the set presents itself. Um, and so that's something he's actively working on. But again, I just really love seal and structures. I think those are ideal mechanics to have in a custom standard environment. I talked about how I think custom standard is best when it shows unique gameplay experiences that Magic players can't normally get in normal Magic, but still feels like great Magic design. And I think Ruins of Dohrum does that with both seal and structures, which is why I have it ranked so highly. Metropolis is some dumb set. I don't know why I put it as number one. I mean, but seriously, Metropolis is my set. It's Cyberpunk Magic. I've been refining this set over a really long time, and that's not a reason to vote for it, but just to say that it has received a lot of polish. And I think that comes across when you look at the spoiler, when you look at the set primer, and you look at the individual designs that would possibly see play in Constructed. Something I've done recently is previous things that have made the set unappealing for Custard were too much reliance on upload, too much internal synergy, making it difficult to evaluate. And something I did this last fall is I looked at all of the upload designs and I cut down on them a lot so that hopefully only the most fun ones are left to shine. And of the ones that are pushed for Constructed, I think they don't make the set too parasitic. Like, it's not going to be all upload all the time if Metropolis gets in. I think maybe there'd be a deck, but specifically I've been developing upload so that the set plays much better with Custom Standard and with other sets, and just plays better generally. And then I think Supremacy, black-white vehicles. I think there's just some of the green designs I've been pushing. I've been very deliberate with the constructed cards that I've been pushing and the designs I've been presenting to the front of the set. And something I did this rotation that I haven't done before, and I don't think other sets did, but I might be wrong, is I specifically tested my set for constructed by making constructed decks and testing them against each other with other players to see if I was right about these constructed designs. And I've been fine-tuning my designs accordingly, which I think has been helpful. But, for you watching the video, that's just to give you some amount of confidence that I've been careful about these designs. They're deliberate, and they've been tested at least a couple times. I have obvious bias in putting Metropolis as number one, but I hope it gets in. And honestly, I hope any of these top 5 sets get in. And honestly, I'd be okay with any of the sets getting in over no rotation. I think it's been a strong rotation. It's been a lot of fun to look at all these sets and consider what would be good or bad for Custom Standard, and how to make these sets better, and what I would change or so on. So thanks for watching all these videos, and specifically this video, and hopefully it was helpful or useful. And good luck to all the designers who have submitted their sets on the vote coming up this weekend. Thank you.